Over to you, Bill.
All right. Thank you very much, David. Um, and thank you, Jennifer, for organizing this and everybody that's worked on it. And a big thanks to the Mapamundi Trust. Um, what just a fabulous project. And let's see if we can figure out how to get through the presentation. My apologies for the technical difficulties. The main thing I was going to do is work through the recovery, but I wanted to give a little bit of background about the project it's starting. And that's important because there's another feature of the Hereford Gospels that's worthwhile mentioning. And Jennifer, next slide, please. The impetus for me for this project started in 2016. I was working on dry point writing, and I was capturing it with a technique called reflectant transformation imaging. And there's dry point in the Hereford Gospel. There's a wonderful dry point drawing that I wanted to capture and look at. And I also wanted to study the manuscript because many times when there's one piece of dry point, there's more throughout. Um, so back in 2016, I actually spoke with Marianne Furman, got permission, and I was actually working on the dry point. And I believe it was a team from, boy, and I don't totally trust my memory here, from the University of Lincoln. They had a small little kit that could do UV photography. And this project, I guess, starts for Richard Gameson way back in the early 2000s when he actually noticed that there was palimpsest in the Hereford Gospels. Well, they had the UV kit there, I think in about 2015, and they took a picture and they could show some of the palimpsest. The letters were too fuzzy and they couldn't be read. So one of the things that Marianne asked me to do was to take some images with RTI to see if we could recover some of that erased text from before the Hereford Gospels was actually written. Next slide, please. There's just an image of me doing RTI. Um, it's normally done with a dome, but you can also do it by hand. Next slide. And here I am actually doing it. For RTI, what you do is you take a number of photographs with the camera in a stable position and then change your lighting source. In this particular instance, since I'm doing it by hand, I'm literally setting a timer on my camera and clicking through, and I'm between the legs of the tripod, I'm taking about 15 different photographs with the flash held at a different angle. I'm emulating a dome with a very, very expensive piece of equipment called a piece of string so that I can actually measure and keep the same distance from the, the Hereford Gospels. And then the software can actually calculate it and put it all together. Next slide, please. And here's just kind of the pattern that I use. Next slide. And here's the setup. Now, how the software knows how to calculate your angle of light, you'll see those little half spheres on the left. It actually looks for where the light is reflecting off of those spheres. Next slide, please. And one of the challenges of the Hereford Gospels, as in all medieval manuscripts, is they're old. Bindings have actually constricted, things dry out, so it wouldn't open quite all the way. So, in trying to get photographs all around the Gospels, I had to leave some out, which meant the RTI wasn't quite as precise as I would have liked it to be, but it still does an excellent job. Next slide, please. And Jennifer, if you'll go ahead and at the bottom, you should be able to run this one. This is a little video. And it just shows once the software pulls the images together and creates the RTI file, It allows you to have control over the lighting. So the ball up in the upper right-hand corner, you can actually move that with your mouse. And then you can also move what you're looking at, enlarge it. You can do enhancements as well, so that you can really see the surface details. And this is something called diffuse gain, which is increases the height and the shadow of the height and the of the surface details. And there's our wonderful winged lion. And there's a number of different mathematical enhancements that you can use to try to pull out that detail just a little bit more. All right. We, and this is called a specular enhancement, which increases the shine. One of the things about the uh, parchment in the Hereford Gospels, it's very fine and very finished, um, so that you don't have much depth with the dry point writing, but you can still see it here. Next slide, please. And you'll probably have to hit this one more time to get by the video. Here's just a picture of the page. This winged lion is on the Beatitudes page in Mark's Gospel. Next slide, please. And there's a closer up picture of it. Um, you can see that it's a it's a little rough. When you think about taking a stylus and etching it into parchment that is dry, it is hard to get really the exact lines that you want. So dry point writing is always a little rough. Next slide, please. Just another view of it. Next slide, please. Now, why is it a lion? Why would they be putting a winged lion on the Beatitudes page? Um, the winged lion is normally the symbol for the evangelist Mark. However, the lion is also a symbol for Christ. And during the medieval period, what happened is that lore from India, Egypt, Greece, Rome was still very alive in how they understood the natural world. And what there was actually written a book called the Physiologus that collected all of that information and related it to Christ, God, and the symbolism of Christianity. In the Physiologus, it talks about the lion having representing multiple attributes of Christ. And two that I particularly like is that the lion was believed to cover its tracks with its tail if a hunter was following it. This was seen as Christ only revealed his gospels to who he chose to reveal it to. So I think this is probably good reasoning why we might see a lion on the Beatitudes page. Here he is revealing specific teachings to the people he wants to reveal them to. Another one, the lion was believed, or lion cubs were believed to be stillborn, and the male lion, after 3 days, would roar or breathe in their faces and bring them to life. So this, of course, represents the resurrection, but also Christ's power over life and death. Next slide, please. Now, the little design on the left, it's hard to tell what that is. It looks like a butterfly. And if you want to click one more time, Jennifer, this is the finial in, let's see, I think I pulled that out of Mark's Gospels, um, which is just a little design at the top of a decorated initial. And you can see Jennifer pointed out that they were very similar. So I thought I'd bring that into this image. Good eye, Jennifer. Next slide, please. Now, the hope was to be able to actually recover perhaps some of the palimpsest text with RTI. You can see, and this is a picture of the Chad Gospels, you can see how letters stand out. And what happens with iron gall ink is it etches its way into parchment and leaves an indent. Next slide, please. And here in the Hereford Gospels, this is one of the palimpsest pages. There are no indents whatsoever. So RTI was totally unsuccessful in being able to recover any of the palimpsest, unfortunately. Um, so this is one of the things that kind of put me on the trail to see, can I get some multispectral imaging system into Hereford Cathedral so we can actually recover this palimpsest and see what it is. I'm sure Richard and Andy mentioned in their talk that a palimpsest text uh, for a manuscript of this age is very, very unusual. So I was really curious to see what it was. Next slide, please. Um, so the project started out, and I actually received permission from Hereford to come in 2020. However, COVID hit, and that caused all sorts of havoc. So I was finally able to get there in 2023. And one of the things that the Mappamundi Trust wanted me to do was to image the whole manuscript, which was very good because there isn't a whole set of images for the manuscript. However, I was really only focusing on the manuscript pages that had the palimpsest. And the system that I used was actually designed by Dave Messenger at RTI and Julie Decker. And it was designed so that it would give people access to multispectral imaging and we could travel around fairly easily and actually recover text. So the idea is to get good enough images to recover text, but not do the glossy glamour images that we're so used to being produced by cell phones. However, by doing the whole manuscript, suddenly people can have access to actually being able to view what is in there. Um, Unfortunately, my system was not quite up to the task of recovering the palimpsest. I had worked with it. We have a early edition of Copernicus in our History of Science collection that has annotations that had been erased. And there was a chemical agent put on them to try to remove them. My system was able to recover those annotations. So I had pretty good faith that it would be able to recover the Hereford palimpsest, but it wasn't. Um, while I was traveling, I had a capacitor that kind of came loose on one of my LEDs, and Dave Messenger was actually in Durham working with Andy and Richard. And Andy said, "Oh, I've got a system. You can borrow mine." And I was able to fix mine, but his system is a little more powered than mine. So he came in and imaged the second time in 2024, and that was the magic for recovering the palimpsest. Next slide, please. Um, Here, just kind of a comparison of the two systems. Um, Light frequencies are measured in nanometers, and you can see I've got the scale at the bottom. Blue frequencies, ultraviolet frequencies are shorter wavelengths, longer frequencies go into the reds and the infrareds. One of the keys to Andy's systems was the four filtered images that are down at the bottom where he's getting very, very precise data from his images. One of the problems with LED lights, even though you can have an LED light that says that it's producing 365 nanometers, it may be off a little bit. Um, so consequently, the filters give you some really good accuracy. Next slide, please. And kind of the magic for recovery. And unfortunately, I won't be able to show you a demonstration here. But the magic of recovery is really not in the multispectral images themselves, but in the statistical methods that you actually use to see differently. The human eye is a wonderful fiction. Um, our eye is able to see red, green, and blue light, and it combines that light to see the spectrum that we see. With the multispectral imaging, we've got 18, 20 images of specific light frequencies. What do we do with those? Sometimes there will be enough data of a palimpsest for us to actually read some of the letters. But usually each one of those light frequencies are just capturing enough information for us to get hints and clues. And so we need to put it together in a different way. So what we have statistical analytic methods that allow us to do this. The three main ones that work well for manuscripts and recovering palimpsests are principal component analysis, minimum noise fraction, and independent component analysis, PCA, MNF, and ICA. Now, how they work is that they will take a whole set of 18 images, and the method for principal component analysis, what it does is it looks at each pixel and looks at those pixels and looks at their variance, and it groups them by variance. Then it takes those pixels and rearranges them into new images. So a new image will be created from the set with all the pixels with a certain range of variances in them. Hope, hopefully that makes sense, and we'll have time at the end for questions. So what you're able to do with each one of these methods is actually go in there and take the images you have and rearrange the pertinent data so that you can actually read the palimpsest pages. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and this is just a very, very quick comparison of the two systems. You can see mine on the left is pretty small and compact. Andy's has a larger system. One of the things that is really helpful with photography, and one of the issues that kind of limits mine, is it's in a tent, so it can be in the dark and I can control the lighting. However, that causes a little bit of glare on the page, which can hurt recovery. The only way you can get away from that glare is to have your lights further away from actually a manuscript. And I actually could pack mine up in a backpack and carry it around. All right, next slide, please. Here's just one of the examples of the recovery. Here is page 100V, and you look at this page and you say, okay, it's it's a perfectly fine page. Next, just click one time, Jennifer, please. And after you do the recovery work with PCA, you can actually see that we have a wonderful decorated initial here that has been totally erased. Next slide, please. Here is just kind of a comparison through, and I'm not sure how well you can see this on your screens. Hopefully it's coming through fairly well. But the first one is actually one I continue to keep working with the images because it annoys me to no end that they weren't able to recover the palimpsest, and it's very, very close. If you look at the top image, what you can normally pick out is letters with ascenders like B's or descenders like P's, and sometimes you can pick out E's, but you can't quite pick out the letters just don't have quite the clarity to sort them. They're kind of fuzzed together. After you do a principal component analysis or an ICA or an MNF, you get a whole new set of images. To help us actually see, and why these are color images, is that you combine them as if they're an RGB image. So it produces a false color image. These were the steps I was going to walk through and demonstrate this morning because it's almost like a magic show. Why we combine these together is that it helps the human eye to be able to see contrast and pick out minor details that sometimes is hard to see in a black and white image. When you have, oops, when you have images from your PCA, ICA, and MNF, you go through all the images and pick out the ones that actually show the palimpsest pages, the recovered text, the best. You'll pick out your three best and you'll combine them in the red, green, blue channels of an RGB image, and you get the false color image. Many times that will allow you, as you can see in the second image here, to actually read the palimpsest text. Andy's system was good enough that even some of the PCA images, you could actually read the text pretty well. After you do the combination, there's one more thing you can do to actually enhance the visibility just a little bit more. You can do something called a decorrelation stretch. What that does is when we're looking at an image, we have the red, green, and blue channels, and those are correlated. What a decorrelation does, it takes the correlation between colors away, and you can change individual colors. So I can change blue and keep red and green the same. But what I can do is I can stretch blue over a wider capacity, a wider range of possible colors to reveal some subtleties that I can't see otherwise. The upper image there has actually been a decorrelation stretch has been applied to, which gives me almost enough details to read, but not quite. Um, that is I was going to hop into my demonstration now, and unfortunately, I wish I could show you the demonstration because it really is like magic. If you think back to the one image where you see no palimpsest whatsoever, and then you have that big, wonderful insular D that appears once you do the processing. Yeah, it's really fun to see happen. To do the processing, I've got some Python codes that do PCA, ICA, and MNF, and then I can look through them, combine them in another program called ImageJ. Next slide, please. One thing that I've done is I've got images up on the OSF, a website for Hereford. Here's a link to the website. And I was going to actually walk people through that very quickly as well. What it has, it's got an overview of the project. It talks about multispectral imaging. It talks a little bit about how to do the ICA, PCA, and MNF. And then it gives results. On the website, you can download all the images of all the pages of the Hereford Gospels, the RGB images. I also have some RTI files that you can download. You'll have to download a viewer, and I give a link to that viewer as well so that you can play with changing the light and looking at those pages. I've got some of the recovery pages up, but I will be putting more up in the future. I've mainly got most of the imaging that I did up, and I'll be working on the images from Richard and Andy's wonderful work coming in the near future. Next slide, please. Okay, and a project like this just takes enormous amount of people collaborating in wonderful ways to make it happen. So special thanks to all these people um, and more. There were even more people that were involved in this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Quickly, what it looks like. I don't know whether you want me to click on anything, Bill, just to demonstrate it any further, but that's what you'll be taken to if you click on Bill's link.
Yes, and what you can do in the storage, if you want to click on the RGB, and then you can go ahead and just click on the first image. And it should take it a second. We should see the image come up.
Yeah.
And so you'll be able to look at every page in the Hereford Gospels through this website. And then just on the left there, you can see a little download button. You can actually click on this, the download button, and download the image if you want to have it on your computer and look at it and not have to be connected to the website.
Brilliant. So I think
If you
the
want,
download is probably there on my screen, but yeah, great. And I must admit, I've got quite a lot of these on my computer now, and for the first time in the comfort of my own study, being able to not quite turn the pages, but go through the pages of the Hereford Gospels is quite something. But let me